decided to break up with me on the day we were supposed to be boarding our flight to meet my family for the first time. And when I tell you, there were no signs. There were no signs. Oh, but there's always signs. No. And you know what? Yeah. Hindsight is a hell of a drug. The I knew it all along phenomenon. I have the ability to reflect post-breakup, but I still would not have been able to see this coming. And I'll tell you why. The scary part is that we had a great relationship. We had a healthy relationship. And the reason I'm putting those quotation marks in is because maybe at the end you kind of just see the damage that you didn't know was there. We never fought with each other. We never raised our voices at each other. And if anything did come up, we would sit down in an appropriate, safe space and share what we needed to. So I thought our communication was great. When our relationship was becoming more and more serious, we decided to set aside a little bit of time on the weekends to have some relationship check-ins. So this could look like, hey, how can I support you this week? Or how are you feeling? Is there anything you need to talk about? Or was there anything I did this week that upset you that you just didn't think was a good time to bring it up? But there weren't a lot of issues in the relationship, so he would just be very reassuring, telling me how happy he is and wanting to progress for a long-term future together. So I felt extremely safe and secure in this relationship. Woo! And to add on to this, our beliefs, our values, our ethics, our morals, and our goals were aligned, in my opinion. So around the 6-month mark, we decided to have our serious, long-term future conversation. You know, the early conversation of, do we want kids? What are we going to do about finances? Do we see a long-term future? What are the next steps? Do we want or see a marriage together? And he reassured me that he wants to continue to progress towards a long-term, serious future. Great. We're on the same page. So now let's fast forward to 1 month before the breakup. There had been one issue that we had been dealing with since the beginning of the relationship, and we had been communicating about it over time, but this conversation started to get more serious by the time it was 1 month before the breakup. So we were communicating a lot during this time, like hours on the phone during the week, every day, and I was trying my best to support him and, you know, be a good partner. And during that time, he told me that all the communication we were having about this made him feel so much closer to me and that he wants to continue to communicate like this. I loved to hear it. I loved this man so much. This is still confusing. Now we're 3 weeks before the breakup. He invites me to India for 2 weeks in January to go to a colleague's wedding. Cool, super fun. Future plans, love that. Now we're 1 week before the breakup. Now we start looking at dates for India, and he says that we should start looking up flights. So we do, and I'm so excited. 1 day before the breakup, and 1 day before we are boarding our flight to meet my family for the first time. And mind you, we only booked this trip 3 weeks prior. We're getting packed for the trip. He goes to the gym and he texts me and says, hey, let's check in for our flights. Great, love that. I am so excited for this trip. My brother booked flights so that he could come meet him, and my sister was gonna drive 3 hours with her 3 kids to come meet him as well. We were all ready to go. Night before the trip. We're laying down, we're laughing, everything is great, until he decided to bring up the issue of having children or not. Out of nowhere, which in the long run ended up being a non-problem, but this is how it all started. So now all of a sudden, I'm confused, I'm backed into a corner, I'm upset, I feel like I'm starting to have a trauma response because I knew there was something really off about this. And that's when he says to me, maybe I shouldn't go on this trip. You know, I can just drive you to the airport tomorrow and drop you off. What? What is happening? So I told him I needed some space and went to shower. So I'm already in shock, but I'm starting to realize that this doesn't really have to be an issue because it's not an issue. But I'm still really upset. He's upset. So we just lay in bed and we're just trying to figure out what is happening. And then after a long silence, he breaks it by saying, well, actually, I have been having some long-term doubts and concerns the last few weeks. And I'm like, oh, there it is. This didn't have anything to do with children. But my heart broke in that moment because a few weeks and you didn't say anything when you were given every opportunity to do so. And this is all coming up the night before we're supposed to leave on this trip. Are you kidding me? I knew I could not have that conversation that night though. So we both agreed that the best thing to do was just put on one of our shows, get in bed, and go to sleep and have a conversation the next day. So at this point, he has already told me that we should cancel the trip and, put our relationship first. And I had to call my parents that night and tell them, and I was just absolutely devastated. It still seemed like a normal night going to bed that night because we were watching our show, we were laughing, we were cuddling, and then we said we loved each other before we went to sleep. I had to go into the living room though at some point because this was my first time alone with my thoughts, and I needed to sob, like physically let it out. And so I did. I sobbed all night, and I looked like a potato the next morning because my eyes were bulging and swollen and ugh. So the next morning, he's laying with me. He goes out and gets me breakfast and coffee, and then we're just sitting on the sofa. I'm pretty much mute. I'm like still in shock and in pain, and I'm all over the place. He left the apartment to go talk to his sister on the phone. He ended up rear-ending someone because, he's emotional, but he's fine. He was fine. But he comes back and he says, okay, let's have this conversation. And so we do. I still didn't think a breakup was gonna happen. I won't go into all the details in this video because it's already really long, but he basically just starts giving me a list of all the reasons why he doesn't think we will work long term, and a lot of it has to do with me, but it still didn't make sense to me. Our lifestyles are different. Our goals are different. We have different interests. We're just different people. I'm more independent. Wait, isn't that something you know within 2 weeks of dating someone? And where is this coming from? Because I hadn't heard a peep of this before. And in fact, all I had heard before and all the communication I was getting from him was, things are great. I love you. I want a future. So when I say blindsiding, shocking, and unexpected, out of nowhere. So 2 words, avoidant attachment. There is so much more I can get into about all of this, but at the end of the day, if someone doesn't want to be with me or they don't think I am a fit for them in the long run, then they shouldn't be with me. And that's okay. But there are healthy ways you go about this, and he did me so wrong. I thought he was a great communicator because he was communicating reassurance to me, love to me, but in reality, he wasn't actually communicating his needs, feelings, concerns, doubts, which he should have been. And I feel like he robbed me of having a conversation and just went straight to a breakup. At the end of the day, he treated me so well, and I really, truly loved him. And I'm sad because this whole time I didn't realize he didn't love me the same as I did. But, there is no love lost in this. I still think he is a really good, kind-hearted person, and he has a lot of work to do on himself. But also, I'm allowed to be angry and hurt, and that's okay too.
Morn seems all in, talks about a future, even plans trips, then suddenly switches to doubt. It sounds like he didn't fully communicate his real feelings until the last possible moment, reading you with shock and unanswered questions. It's heartbreaking when you invest so much thinking you're building a future only to learn he was holding back.